Welcome to this video tutorial from the National Union of Students. This tutorial looks at the National Student Survey in a broader context, covering its strengths and weaknesses and ways the data should and should not be used. This tutorial is primarily aimed at Students' Union staff, learner voice practitioners and university or college staff who will be manipulating their organisation's NSS results. It may be of interest to student officers or representatives too, or anyone who's interested in situating the NSS in a broader higher education policy landscape. We'll start by considering the strengths and weaknesses of the survey. You may wish to run this exercise in groups, asking each group to map out the strengths and weaknesses of the survey, as well as any opportunities or threat it provides in a SWOT analysis. Here's one I prepared earlier, which I'll talk through. Firstly, the survey has many strengths. The data can draw attention to poorly designed, poorly delivered or under-resourced courses that might otherwise continue the way they are. Because of the importance of NSS to a university or college's reputation, survey data can be valuable when lobbying for more resource to be allocated to a particular course, or for a change in the curriculum, assessments, or delivery. The data can be very useful for focusing the work of your education officer or your course or class reps. The survey gives an indication of the issues students care about on their course, or across your university or college, and gives you a place to start when thinking about what campaigns you want to run, or what research you want to carry out. With over a 70% response rate nationally, the NSS is one of the best sources of student opinion. No other student survey covers the number of students that the NSS does, and no other student survey asks students in the majority of UK universities and colleges the same questions. It's a brilliant starting point for further research into what your students think. Because the response rate is so high, the survey gives you valuable information on underrepresented groups of students that you might otherwise not be able to gather. NSS data is available broken down by a wide variety of demographics, including ethnicity, age, disability and gender. This data can really help you if you're arguing for liberating the curriculum or making timetables more accessible for student parents. The survey also has its weaknesses, and it's important to recognise these when you use the data. The first is that satisfaction with a course doesn't necessarily mean that the education was of a high quality. Student satisfaction is important, but it's not a measure of educational quality. There are so many reasons why a student might answer satisfied or dissatisfied. For this reason, NSS data should not be used as a proxy for measuring teaching excellence. The survey also carries the risk that universities or colleges may act on swings or trends they see in the data that aren't actually statistically significant. This is a particular risk when looking at small cohorts, smaller courses, small colleges, or demographics with a low number of students. It's worth taking NSS data with a pinch of salt and making sure to check your sample size when looking at alarming swings. Also, don't see it as the be-all and end-all. If you see something in the data that alarms you, do some further research, talk to the students on that course or in that group. The NSS was designed to compare the same course at different universities or colleges. Since its introduction in 2005, league tables comparing universities to each other at an institutional level have proliferated, but this is not what the data were originally designed for. For this reason, HEFCE published benchmarks for each institution that take into account various factors about a university and its student body to give a more accurate target figure for overall satisfaction. Universities and colleges, and even more so in the case of students' unions, are so diverse that often institutional level comparisons are comparing apples with oranges. There's a risk that because of the prominence of NSS, issues that aren't covered by the survey are given less focus. There's so many areas of student life that aren't covered by the survey, from housing, to crime, sports, to transport, debt and finances, to work and employability, that are huge issues for so many students. It's important that these issues aren't sidelined by too close a focus on the NSS. One of the biggest criticisms of the survey is that it's a passive form of engagement for students, and that its focus on satisfaction plays unhelpfully into narratives around consumerism in education. With talk in the higher education sector focusing on engaging students as partners in their learning, rather than seeing them as passive recipients of knowledge from on high, the NSS offers students the chance to comment on what's been sold to them, rather than giving them a chance to help shape their learning experience. Some of this can be improved by using the data in certain ways. For example, using the data as a springboard for conversations between staff and students changes a passive form of engagement into a way to facilitate active student engagement. For students' unions and student representatives, the survey offers a number of opportunities. First of all, the survey makes universities and colleges sit up and listen to students' views, After all, they won't understand their low scores unless they talk to students, and therefore to improve, they need to engage with students on academic issues. The NSS gives staff an opportunity to reach out to their students and, especially their course reps, to help them to understand their scores. The NSS can be a good tool to start conversations between staff and students about the course, about the curriculum, about the assessments, in a way that's constructive rather than a list of complaints from students. The best way to use the survey is as a springboard for more targeted and sophisticated understandings of student views. The NSS can point you towards further research. You can shape what questions to ask and who to target based on your NSS results across courses, departments, and different demographic groups of students. The survey offers a number of threats to students and student unions. Firstly, there's a risk that institutions might choose quick fixes or easy wins in order to boost scores, rather than really taking the time to improve the quality of education for students. There's a bit of give and take required on our side too. Sometimes broad sweeping or cultural change might be unpopular at first, and often the need to improve NSS scores year on year can stifle innovation and promote stasis. A threat to the validity and robustness of the data can come in the way that institutions promote the survey to students. HEFCE have strict rules on promoting the survey to ensure that the data is anonymous and that students give honest responses, but some institutions have broken these rules in the past, either by trying to influence students' answers or by targeting specific groups of students who are more likely to score them highly. If you see this type of behaviour, report it to your students' union, to NUS or to HEFCE. Another threat to students is the use of NSS data in performance managing academic staff. This is unfair, as the survey is about the course as a whole, and many of the questions cover parts of the university or college that teaching staff have no control over. The NSS was designed as an informative tool for prospective students and a source of data to inform enhancement within universities or colleges, not as a stick to beat staff with. Aside from anything else, this is likely to have a detrimental effect on staff relations with their students. Coming back to the point that satisfaction isn't a proxy for quality education, NSS data should not be used in this way. Another threat is that surveys may encourage passive student behaviour. If NSS is touted as the main way to give feedback on your course, students may not feel the need to raise issues during their course, or they may not be aware that they can. So clearly the survey has its pros and cons. I'd like to sum up with 3 quotes that sum these up quite neatly. Firstly, institutions working to make scores go up on surveys is akin to students studying for what's on exams. Most of us would agree that studying solely to pass an exam is poor quality learning. Similarly, if institutions aim solely to make NSS scores go up, rather than to improve students' experiences, we could argue that this constitutes a poor quality intervention. Secondly, NSS is about as scientifically useful as TripAdvisor is for travellers. This was meant as a critique of NSS, but I found it quite helpful. I'll give you an example. I, as a member of NUS staff, travel the country a fair bit, and I go to a lot of cities I'm not necessarily familiar with. When I'm looking for somewhere to eat dinner, I'll often check TripAdvisor, but I don't make my decisions solely based on what's there. There's a lot of factors to take into account. How far do I want to walk? What type of food do I want to eat? How much do I want to spend? Maybe a friend's given me a recommendation of a really good place. Similarly, prospective students are very unlikely to base their entire decision of what and where to study on NSS scores alone. It can help you along the path, but like TripAdvisor, it's just a beginning. Finally, all models are wrong, but some are useful. This quote points to the value of pragmatism when using NSS results. Yes, bear in mind the limitations and weaknesses of the survey, and don't claim things that you can't substantiate. But at the end of the day, if you can use the NSS to improve students' lives, then please do. Thank you for watching. If you have any queries, please contact nss@nus.org.uk.